from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast
Can I welcome everyone to the Police and Crime Committee meeting? This morning we'll be holding the second part of our investigation into how the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, MOPAC, is overseeing culture change in the Metropolitan Police Service. Please could you make sure that your electronic devices are switched to silent mode to avoid any interruptions. Can I now ask our clerk, Lauren Harvey, for any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Assemblymember Cooper, Assemblymember Lord Duval and Assemblymember Wilson, for whom Assemblymember Prince will be attending as a substitute.
Thank you very much. Can I ask the committee to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if members have any other interest to declare? Can we confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of January 2026 to be signed by me as a correct record?
Agreed.
Can we note the completed, ongoing and closed actions arising from previous meetings of this committee?
Noted.
We now move on to our main item of business, and I'd like to welcome our guest, Kaya Comer-Schwartz, who is the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. Kaya, unfortunately, can only stay for the first hour. Kenny Bowie, who is the Director of Strategy and MPS Oversight at MOPAC, and Caroline Treadwell, who is the Head of Oversight and Governance at MOPAC. Moving on to the questions, and I'll start with a question about the Fairfield Independent Review that now is well underway, I understand. The Fairfield Review is expected to report back to the Met and the Mayor in the summer of 2026. Do you believe this timeframe allows for a sufficiently thorough examination of the Met's progress and the areas where serious concerns may remain? Deputy Mayor, if we could start with you, please.
Yes, I mean, I think the first action that Dr. Gillian Fairfield will be launching in a few weeks is a call for evidence. Then they will be moving towards doing some field work and investigation. I think it's worth reflecting on that this is a review of a review, so they're not starting from scratch. That they'll obviously be crossover from the Casey team to that team. They're also working closely with HMIC, which the committee knows did a major review of the Metropolitan Police when they were engaged. So those things all considered, we're confident that Gillian will be able to do Dr. Fairfield will be able to do a robust review.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything to add to the Deputy Mayor's answer? No? OK, thank you. We'll move on.
All I would say is that Dr. Fairfield has already been in the Met. She's had strategic briefings with the Commissioner, with the Deputy Mayor to start getting a hand on things. I know that yesterday she was attending the Met Leadership Conference at the QE2. So this work is already underway. And as Deputy Mayor said, there will be a call for evidence, a public call for evidence, hopefully going out in the next few weeks. And we can certainly provide links to that when it comes round, and would encourage you and your constituents and everybody to fill that in so that they can get the richness of data that they want for the review.
Thank you. Moving on to the section about MOPAC oversight and processes and capacity. Before we get on to the question that I need to ask you, could I start off by, as we're talking about reviews, I understand that MOPAC itself is being reviewed. Do we have a time frame for when we will have a review feedback, please?
So our oversight and MOPAC as a whole is part of the terms of reference for the Fairfield review in terms of whether we have acted on that. That is in terms, if you look at what Baroness Casey said about some of our work, there was a recommendation about setting up the London Policing Board. There was also some comments made about the structure and way in which our oversight was conducted and our relationship with the Met. All of that is part of Gillian, Dr. Fairfield's terms of reference and is being considered along the same timescales as the Met.
Thank you. Would you mind moving your mic just a little bit closer, please, Kenny? Thank you. OK, so Deputy Mayor and Kenny, what do you consider to be the most impactful change MOPAC has made to the way it oversees cultural reform within the Met since the Casey review, and are there any further changes planned? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I would say that the recommendation that Baroness Casey laid out in terms of MOPAC needing to be less tactical and more strategic in its oversight has led the governance reform that Kenny and Caroline have led from an operational standpoint. We've really focused on making sure that the work we've done with the London Policing Board, but also internally, we've moved from having less tactical one-to-one meetings with ACs to deeper dives in thematic areas. For example, we've looked at public order, reduction of violence, public protection, in deep dive areas which we believe has strengthened that oversight and role modelled the cross-cutting nature in which we think that transformation will move forward.
Thank you.
So I would say two things there. The first is just to build, both of them building what the Deputy Mayor said there. First, I do think the most impactful and the most visible change has been the creation of the London Policing Board, and obviously the bringing in of external expertise and the fact that we have moved our oversight of the Met in that regard from being behind closed doors, as it was called, to being out in the open now. I think if you look at some of the sessions which the LPB have had, particularly I would highlight one in the London Race Action Plan, those have been challenging sessions and has led to change in that regard. From the Met, for example, they're bringing in the expertise, Dr. Shane Daniels, to look at that again. The second thing I would say, as Deputy Mayor said, is a move away from those one-to-ones with the Assistant Commissioners to new thematic topics where they have to bring people from across the command structures. That was designed intentionally because the reason that we have done that is the AC bilats tended to focus on quite tactical issues which went up and down the command structure. What we've tried to do with some of the topics there that's been highlighted by the Deputy Mayor is move away from that and get the Met trying to think rather than vertically, trying to get them to think horizontally so that they actually join things up. So if you look at public order, rather than just having the AC who's responsible there for public order, you would also bring somebody there from neighbourhood policing, because we know abstractions are one of the major issues which comes out from that. So you actually are therefore able to have a conversation about how do you match those things up. Somebody from criminal justice, what happens if somebody's arrested at a public order event, like your data teams, so that you actually understand the data from all of that. So the idea behind that change is to do that, and that does allow us to drive then the cultural issues as well through that by talking about, well, how do you consider the qualities from this? How do you consider the impact on your staff and on the public of all of that? So I think both of those have been quite significant changes.
Thank you. Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Deputy Mayor, what is your assessment of MOPAC's current capacity to provide effective oversight of culture change within the Met?
I think we have reasonable capacity. I think we have obviously our data insight and oversight team within MOPAC, but we also have the London Policing Board, which brings in additional capacity. We also have the Equalities Reference Group, and we work closely with the London Police Ethics Panel regularly. We also obviously meet regularly with the IOPC and HMIC to make sure that we're having that kind of wider oversight and triangulation, and that's really helpful. Obviously, we want to bring in as much London insight as well, so you know that the MOPAC regularly does the public attitude survey and the user satisfaction survey, as well as the online victim survey. So not only do we have internal capacity, but we try and maximise that capacity with working with external partners and regularly using the insight of Londoners.
I mean, effective scrutiny of the Met would involve vigilance over how it spends its money, wouldn't it? The Command and Control project is already £90 million over budget and experienced further project slippage last year. Can you update the committee on how this project is being effectively overseen, and when is it actually expected to be delivered?
We have regular briefings on that project. I think, it's important, although the committee has asked me to talk about culture today, and I can come back with further details on command and control if the committee would like. I think it's important to recognise that this is a system that was set up 40 years ago, the current system. The Met desperately need a new system, and we're working closely with them to ensure that we quickly and effectively move towards having that new system. But I know that the committee is very aware that it hasn't been a smooth way forward in getting that.
It's been an absolute disaster, let's face it. I mean, so has Connect. That's been an absolute disaster.
I don't know in which way you're saying Connect has been a disaster. There were some initial teething problems, but it's in place now and has been working effectively. Kenny, I don't know if you want to say how that's moved forward.
The trouble is, when things go wrong, it costs a lot of money. And we're told that all these decisions are made strategically, but actually lots of the decisions are made because of budgeting. As an example, Pinner Police Station, that apparently costs nothing to run, but you're going to close it under the guise of cost. So where things go wrong, because they're not being overseen properly, it has a real effect out there in London.
I don't think we are closing Pinner Station.
Oh, let me tell you, you are, unless you've changed your mind. Are you telling me here and now that we're going to keep it open?
Counter? You mean the front counter?
Yes, of course.
So we're not.
But it's
closing
volunteers that run the front counter. So are you telling me we're not closing it?
No,
I'll tell
I'm
you,
saying we're not closing the building. I'm saying that we obviously have taken a decision around front counters, which we have talked about. The police have taken an operational decision based on their budgetary requirements that this committee has had regular input and oversight over. So
But you've got oversight over this. You tell me the sense, if they're keeping the station open, why don't they keep the front counter open that is run by volunteers?
Because they did an assessment about how many reports were going into those stations. The 95% of crime reports are coming through online and over the phone, and they want to make sure that police officers are doing the work that the Londoners care most about.
Deputy Mayor, what Londoners are saying is that they're closing all these front counters down so that people can't actually report crimes properly. So therefore, your numbers go down.
That's far from the truth. We know that
that's what Londoners are saying.
Well, we know that crime reporting in various areas has increased, and we know that what also Londoners repeatedly say is they want visible policing, they want officers on the street, and they don't, that. So in a difficult decision, the priority was to make sure we have visible neighbourhood policing, which we're working towards.
And the numbers haven't changed on that. I don't want to be in trouble with our chairman, so I'll hand back to you. But you want to have a look at the numbers of the safer neighbourhood teams, because they're not increasing. So it's all smoke and mirrors.
We are regularly reviewing those numbers. We know that
Deputy Mayor, so am I.
Assembly member, perhaps you'd
areas,
like to write to the Deputy Mayor and ask for the information that you're suggesting that we have.
I was hoping she'd be here for the allotted time today. It's such a shame that she can only spare us an hour, Chairman.
I'm back in 2 weeks, so we have plenty of time there.
Thank you. So moving on to MOPAC oversight in the areas of challenge. Assembly Member Bailey.
I was reading the note on question 5.
There we go.
There we go. In which areas do you believe MOPAC's oversight of cultural change within the Met is currently strongest, and what evidence do you have to support that? Let me start with Kenny. Okay.
So I think our oversight of culture, particularly in terms of how professional standards operates, is very strong. So professional standards, obviously, where they deal with conduct and misconduct cases and where they look at complaints. We have a complaints review team which currently looks at where actually, if a complaint is handled by the Met and then a member of the public is dissatisfied, they're able to make an appeal to us. We get a number of those appeals in every single week. That gives us an opportunity to look at how the Met is handling these issues and pick out thematic issues and feed them back to the Met. The way in which we do that has seen a number of policy changes by the Met as a result, and it's also seen some very serious very serious allegations of criminality where investigations had been closed or hadn't been being pursued, reopened. So there's some very strong evidence around that. We have also been working with them and helping them, for example, to look at where their misconduct cases are through some of our deep dives into disproportionality and misconduct, and working with them. We've then seen them do further work through their SIU, their Strategic Insights Unit, and then take on further work and recommit to work to looking at those things. So I think that's where it's strongest. We also have weekly meetings with them to look at the high-profile individual cases and pick out themes and make sure that those themes are being fed back into the learning around recruitment.
Where would you say your oversight is weakest or needs most improvement? Let me use those words.
So where I think we can go further is, and we've just made changes to reflect this, is around what I would call, so if that was, if you put culture in 2 boxes, and I know this is, it's never quite as neat as this, but like bad culture, i.e. getting rid of people and stopping bad people joining, and then good culture, i.e. how to create that sort of good inclusive culture where people can thrive in the workplace. I think that's an area at MOPAC where I reflected over the last few months. I think it's an area of improvement for the Met as well, if I'm honest, that we could probably do more. And I think that's an area where we've made changes. We've recently brought in a new head of oversight and performance at a more senior level, sits between me and Caroline, and he is now going to be the lead of that. And the reason we've done that is because previously we had that sitting with one individual in MOPAC who was doing a very good job of it. And she was attending all of the right meetings, getting all of that. But actually what we want to be able to do now is, in the same way that we do this for performance and other issues, is to have a slightly more holistic view. So if we have a team who's working with the criminal justice team and they're actually seeing a certain culture there, how we bring that together in of what everybody in MOPAC is seeing. So that's been in place now for the last
Can I just say, I'm sceptical of all these things, because I think there's a lot of desk and paper activity and there's very little change. If you look at the culture piece that really needs to be affected, it's the frontline officers. There is a gulf between the frontline officers, the leadership of the Met, and yourself. I mean, the Met staff survey, one back was very, very bad. The most current one is even worse. And so when you say to me that you are affecting, you need to improve, I would probably use the word overhaul, because Met frontline officers feel absolutely no benefit at all from the activities of MOPAC. So what can be done? Maybe the Deputy Mayor could step in at this point to change that feeling amongst the frontline staff.
I mean, I think we recognise that there has been a lot of change and churn, and the Commissioner has, I think, rightly looked at ways in which they can prioritise things like public protection and neighbourhood officers, make sure that, because he wants to drive high standards, that there isn't opportunities where negative, toxic cultures can embed by leaving teams undisrupted. And the work he's done to uplift leadership and supervision is really important. But I think that recognising that is, causing change and churn within the system, and officers are feeling that. I think also the work that we've been doing, regularly meeting with the staff associations and unions to hear their members' concerns, and making sure that we're feeding that back, and actually more recently brokering a joint meeting so that we're encouraging a culture where within the Metropolitan Police those staff associations, unions are seen as, part of solutions to difficult, challenging issues, not moving away from a more defensive culture is starting to pay off, but we need to continue with that.
I have to disagree vehemently. If you look at the Met staff survey, it would say definitively that it's not making any positive forward movement at all. Again, it was very low a year ago, and it's even lower now, and that's how frontline police officers feel about the activities of senior police officers and around the culture change as well. Your answer entirely focused on meetings and senior staff yourself. If I was a frontline Metropolitan Police officer, you've said nothing to make me feel involved or empowered around that. So, and before you answer, I want you to really focus on this. What can be done differently? Because even if you don't agree with what I'm saying, you cannot deny that the trend is downwards, because the Metropolitan Staff Survey significantly identifies that.
But I think that's the poll-fed survey that you're talking about rather than the Met Police survey, because we don't have the results for the last one. The last one's about 18 months ago. But I take the wider point. I think in terms of, I would answer 2 points there. So one, in terms of us being able to influence the street level officer, if you like, there's a primary question there about whether at the senior level there's a receptivity to what we are saying in the first place. Now, I would argue that that has really transformed over the last 2 to 3 years, and there is now much greater receptivity within the Metropolitan Police, including at senior level, which is where those at the street level will take their steer from, obviously, command and control structure, you would expect that, to what we're saying. Why would I say that? Well, for example, at the latest Strategic Performance Group, we have been presenting there about trust and confidence, about the experience of victims. How does that translate to get to the heart of what you're talking about, Assemblymember Bailey? Well, that translates in the fact that in various boroughs we are now doing joint work with the Met at that kind of local level about what is happening in trust and confidence. How do we work with local officers and the local teams to make sure that their culture internally reflects a positive external culture, which is actually going to improve the experience of officers and, crucially, of the public in terms of how they interact with the police. That's happening across, I think, 3 boroughs at the moment was started, and then we've just had a request from the Metropolitan Police, from the relevant commander, for us to expand that further. So we're in that going to come in at the start of this week. So we're in discussions about how we do that at the moment. So that's a very real example of how we are trying to take.
Can I just say, in interest of time, I think you entirely missed the point. I made the point to the mayor, the deputy mayor, excuse me, a number of times in previous committees. All of your conversation is about the meetings you're having and about the senior officers you're dealing with. If you're a frontline officer, nothing out of MOPAC is advocating for those frontline officers. You've both just sat there and talked about a change of culture, which they feel they have to deliver, but that they think is after them. You always talk about how we're removing people from the force, but what about the people who are left behind? What have you said continually, and what have you done to show these officers that you're advocating for them? Because I'm talking about their response to the Met survey, which again is horrifically low, and part of that, if you speak to officers, that they don't feel like MOPAC and the mayor, I'll be very specific, they don't feel the mayor is supporting them. What would you do to change that conversation amongst those officers?
I mean, I think it's beyond the meetings that we have with, staff associations, unions who represent the concerns of their members. It's also important that you recognise that we regularly, I myself regularly visit police stations, ward teams, and talk to officers all the time. And those conversations are honest, fair, frank. There are things that officers say are really positive, that they recognise the culture that is trying to be moved forward. And there are really helpful suggestions about things that aren't changing, and we reflect that back in our conversations. I think the work that we're doing, as Kenny outlined, to talk about what the positive culture of the Met looks like beyond just, vetting, misconduct, removing, is a really important way. We're talking about how people, frontline officers, are incentivized, recognized for the positive work that they're doing. That has really been taken forward in the work that has been highlighted and profiled within neighbourhood teams. And I think it's, we've always been open and honest about the fact that the culture of the Met is literally like turning an oil tanker, and that is work that is slow but is progressing.
Can I say, I'm going to come back to Chair in interest of time. I still don't think you understand how to advocate for a large group of people. And again, this is not what I'm saying, it's what officers are saying. For instance, you might want to start thinking about talking about the workload they're having to face. If you're a frontline officer, hearing MOPAC, hearing the mayor talk about their workload might help them feel that they're on their side.
And we definitely do recognise that. I mean, the work that we recognised in terms of public protection, one of the key things about that was the caseload months of public protection officers, and the Mayor invested more in that to reduce those and has seen positive outcomes from that. And more recently, the work that we're seeing in neighbourhood teams, in prolific teams, directly feeds into the work that we're talking about with partners improving the criminal justice system. So frontline officers are able to do the extremely important work of being local community crime fighters. We definitely do listen to the concerns of officers around workload.
But I would say to you, if you weigh up the rhetoric coming out of you and out of the Mayor, you look at the good things you say versus the bad things you say. Again, this is how police officers feel. You'll find that it's like a 90-10 thing. That's why their morale is so low. Chair.
Thank you. Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you. Fortunately, Chair, Assemblymember Lord Bailey asked my supplementary about where we're weakest, so it gives me the opportunity to ask a separate question. Just following on, Deputy Mayor, from Assemblymember Hall's question regarding Pinner Police Station, I just want to help, because we're here to gain understanding for the public who are watching. The Met's own figures say that it costs nothing to run. There is not it's a £0 cost savings in their own figures. So it's not a budgetary issue. And the people who one should say, the front counter, are all volunteers. So it's not an operational issue to get more police officers out onto the street. So what is the rationale on Pinner specifically?
I mean, as you know, Assembly Member Roberts, this was an operational decision taken by the Mayor. My understanding of that, especially in relation to Pinner, is that even though there was volunteers helpfully manning that station, when those volunteers weren't available, it was for officers to backfill that to keep the counter open, and that the Metropolitan Police Service obviously have taken this decision partly in financial regard, but
there's no
also,
savings, so it's not financial.
Okay, but also, as I was about to continue saying, but also in regards to where those resources are best placed. And my understanding from the operational decision that they've taken is they feel that the best place for those officers are to be out in neighbourhood teams and not sitting behind desks.
Okay, would you give an assurance that you'd take another look at Pinner, perhaps to, at least have some opening, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, when the volunteers are available, so it isn't an operational
That's not for me to decide,
but you're the Deputy Mayor for Policing. You're supposed to oversee operational, and this isn't an operational
I have overseen, I've been alongside the process on front counters
so the answer's
throughout. No.
Okay, fair enough. Just on what we were discussing earlier, MOPAC has said it provides learning recommendations to the Met to improve the quality and consistency of complaint handling and works collaboratively with the Met to inform officer training in this area. Can you give a specific example of how MOPAC has done this and what impact it has had? For the Deputy Mayor, Kenny. Thank you.
So our focus on reviewing complaint handling is we have a suite of matrix KPIs that we regularly review, exploring where we see anomalies, and also conducting deep dives and making sure we have quality assurance reviews. One of the significant changes that was led by Assistant Commander Lawrence Taylor when he took over vetting was he was really concerned that the professional standards teams that were then based in neighbourhoods were inconsistent in their practice, so has brought those into a central team to make sure that they can standardise that complaints work.
Okay. Just on the broader issue of complaints, how often do you meet with the IOPC?
I myself have regular meetings, I think, on a quarterly basis. Also, our chief executive has regular meetings with the IOPC, and then as and when significant issues come up, we will have additional meetings.
Yeah, without wishing to go into the specifics of individual cases, what's the broad focus of the meetings?
As it said, it depends on whether there is a significant issue that we're talking about. Moreover, we look at kind of reviews, trends in reviews, what we're seeing within the work that the team does on vetting and misconduct, gross misconduct, and also what the IOPC have seen in their recent reviews of cases. We look at thematic areas where we can look to feed back to the Met on where we're seeing that and what might need to be improved on the back of that.
At a working level, obviously, the way that complaint reviews works is the less serious, if you like, in theory cases come to MOPAC for review, and your more serious cases go to IOPC. So we meet them very frequently to actually discuss what the trends are between those things, whether we're seeing exactly the same issues which are arising, where appeals are being upheld or where actually they're not, and what we can feed back jointly to the Met on that. You had a specific question right at the start about what have we done in terms of the complaints, which makes a genuine difference. So we actually have been along at various times to they have a complaints review team, a complaints review unit. So we have been along to the training of the complaints reviews units, worked with the sergeants and inspectors, so that the genuine, like the people who are running these teams. We've provided checklists for them, actual sort of cheat sheets, if you like, of what they actually need to do to make sure it is a properly done case. We then dip in and done dip samples alongside the IOPC to actually check that things are being done in line with the work alongside Schedule 3, because if something's in or out, depends on whether you actually have a right to complaints review, so it's quite a significant thing. Again, we've given guidance and feedback to the Met to check that, and then we've redone dip samples to check that that has had an impact, and we do that on a frequent basis. So I think that's an area where genuinely there has been very strong and good oversight where it has had a genuine impact, and we work in a very collaborative way with the Met on all of that.
Excellent. Just on the relationship with the Met, I mean, the Baroness Casey review was quite damning regarding describing the relationship between the Met and MOPAC as dysfunctional. Does the topic of MOPAC's relationship with the Met ever come up at IOPC meetings?
I mean, in the broadest sense, yes, and their own relationship as well with the Metropolitan Police Service. I think you'll know that the IOPC themselves have done significant review and restructure work, and so, yes.
When was the last time, do you recall?
When was the last time I met? I'm meeting Amanda tomorrow.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. No further.
And we are coming back to the relationship between MOPAC and the Met later on. Thank you, Assemblymember Garrett. Assemblymember Garbett. Sorry, Assemblymember Roberts. Assemblymember Garbett.
Thank you. Yeah, just to continue on the theme of complaints. So this is something that I've raised before, but it'd be interesting to understand within this context that how you are assessing the police's use of public order powers related to kind of complaints, or if that's the only route, or is this something you've spoken about with IOPC, if it's something that's come up? Just in terms of, I've raised my concerns about use of conditions, kettling, disproportionate use of force, and it's just, I don't quite know where that goes, or if you're doing your own assessment of the use of public order powers.
So we have two things to say in that. I think there's two different kinds of complaints here. There's one which is a complaint, if you like, about how the police is particularly using a power, if you like, a general complaint where the person has not been directly impacted. Then there's the route in where you're directly impacted by the police. Now, there's two different routes. I've talked there quite extensively about how we oversee the issues which come up from areas where there's direct impact, if you like, and I'm using direct and indirect here in the loosest possible sense. Where it's that indirect, and we know and we do have issues, and we have had particularly during the Israel-Palestine conflict, where groups have made certain representations to us, and we do go and speak to the Met to understand their rationale. Clearly, the imposition of conditions is not something for us to be involved about. It's not something for the Mayor or the Deputy Mayor to be involved in. Those are operationally independent decisions. It's obviously we can look afterwards and sort of then say to the Met, do you think that was right? Do we think that's proportionate? I've been involved in workshops where they've had the Jewish community in, where they've been talking about how these conditions have worked and where they've not worked, and how the Jewish community has felt about that as a result, and the changes that have been made. Equally, I've been involved in the PSC has put in views to the GLA and had the discussions there. So I see both sides on that. I think you're talking about the question then about what happens in the follow-up. I'm very happy to come and talk about that afterwards, because I think that's quite a difficult thing to do, because stuff then has to go through the criminal justice system. You then get into CPS charging decisions and how issues like that come up. So that it gets a little bit more complicated. I don't want to spend half an hour here, but
yeah, that would be good to speak about. And has anything changed, even in your conversations with the IOPC or just in the terms of the complaints process since Charing Cross? Because I asked the Met Commissioner about if anyone had complained, and it didn't seem to sound like anyone had complained. It was he was quite vague on if people had complained after any of their treatment within, in the Charing Cross. So I just wondered if anything's changed in the complaints process, how you talk about how it's promoted, or anything's changed in the wake of that.
So in terms of the IOPC, I think the significant change that we saw post-Charing Cross is the swiftness in which they dealt with the misconduct of those officers. 7 officers
Just in the interest of time, it's more about complaints and the fact that people didn't complain.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fine. Yes, on the complaint side, I wouldn't say that we saw changes to the complaint system, because it's a regularly reviewed system that we feel is quite robust. But what we did see after Charing Cross was the Met take a cultural a kind of prioritisation of the promotion of those systems and go through their BCUs and make sure that everyone was aware of the complaint system and how to enact them, because we do obviously regularly assess how many complaints are coming in and from where, but it's not the issue of the system, it's whether people feel comfortable using the system, and that really feeds into levels of management, supervision, and the culture of the teams, which you'll know that the Met
I meant the public as well. The people that were subjected to being stamped on and extreme uses of force. How are we trusting that the public feel like they're able to use the complaint process?
So within those individual cases that will have been part of the investigation, that obviously we can't, that has led to the outcome of those 7 officers being reviewed. I think we, moreover, always try and promote the complaint system. I know that in all the correspondence that I use, I make sure that it's always included. And we also obviously work with charities like Crime Stoppers and others to make sure that we are promoting it.
I think there's 2 other things. There's one, which is we run the appropriate adult system, or we don't run it, sorry, that's misspeaking. We commission the service, which is appropriate adults, where that is something where we can have a think about how we promote that for across that system. Equally, we have the ICV scheme, where it's about making sure that through that do the Met have visible, is it clear to the people who have been involved what the system is for all of that, etc. But I mean, we are talking here about relatively low numbers in the ICV of those people, and the ICV scheme, when they go in, they do try and look as much as possible. I mean, it's never going to be entirely foolproof, as Charing Cross has showed, but they do try and go in and look at the detainee welfare, how that's being impacted by the staffing, how that's being impacted by their behaviours at that
Thank you. Maybe it's something that we can pick up more fully as a committee. And then my last question, just under this kind of areas of challenges and culture change. At our last meeting, Diane Vincent from the National Black Police Association spoke about how hard it is for the MPS to be scrutinised because it's so big. Do you have any thoughts on if breaking up the Met would make it easier to scrutinise? Because that's from the National Black Police Association.
I mean, I don't think any of us dispute that the Metropolitan Police Service is a big force. I mean, as I previously said, I think that's why it's really important that we use our partners, we use our community to work. We're moving forward in terms of community scrutiny panel, and the work. Actually, I was going to add on to Kenny's point about the work we're moving forward with our independent custody volunteers to make sure that they have greater, authorisation to raise issues and take that forward is also a key point of that. Also, the work we do with the Equalities Reference Group, the partnership boards that we hold. So we try and almost create an ecology of oversight.
So then when you were, in discussions with the government about the white paper and just like the formation of police, was this a reflection that maybe the MPS is too big? And was it, listening to kind of the unions and the officers?
I mean, the conversations about the white paper, I think we touched a little bit on that on the last committee, but a lot of that is about overall nationally how, the police forces currently are doing procurement. Is it 42 different ways? 43 different ways across the country, and that being illogical, and the fact that those things have never been really looked at before, and there's an economy of scale that obviously works. The things that we've talked about previously around, forensics and things, is there things in the system that could be reformed to improve? I think, the work, the operational work of the National Police Service, will come into fruition after a long period. So I think they were talking perhaps about, counter-terrorism being 3 to 4 years off. And I think my main concern, I think I said this at the last committee, but my main concern is actually, as London, as the capital, where there are those significant issues around counter-terrorism, organised crime, how do we make sure that where it is centralised, we still retain that regional accountability? But I do think there's definitely opportunity in that prioritisation of neighbourhood forces.
Okay. Yeah, this is more about, my reflections on, how we scrutinise and how the Met's able or not able to reform. And I just think it's quite powerful coming from the National Black Police Association, but something to pick up again, I think. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Garbutt. And just for completeness, you referred to the white paper, which of course is consulting on aspects of the Met, no longer being with the Met and with a national organisation. I'm sure we'll hear more about that later. Thank you. Assemblymember Prince.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Kahia. Good morning, Kenny. Good morning, Caroline. Just very quickly, sorry, on the... You okay? Right. On the Pinner Police Station, did you say that it was the Met's decision to close Pinner or yours?
It's an operational decision for the Metropolitan Police Service.
Yeah, I think you'll find you're wrong. I think you find it's to be, you have oversight of that. Kenny, you might want to...
Yeah, so oversight obviously is different from an operational decision. There is an operation where authority rests with the Mayor and the Deputy Mayors over the disposal of assets. That's different from a decision to close a front counter or either to close a police station in Hull.
So, but what I find disappointing, Kaya, is that having learnt from Assemblymember Hall and Assemblymember Roberts that there's a zero cost allocated to that closure, that you're not prepared to have a look at it and have a discussion with the Met.
I mean, I will say that the decision around Pinner obviously is not a decision taken in isolation. You'll know, Assemblymember Prince, I think, that there was an initial proposal on front counters across London and how that worked. That went back to pushed the Metropolitan Police Service to look at how they could engage with more people following that first proposal, and then a second proposal came forward in terms of making sure that there was a wider level of access, so less 24-hour police stations, but more open across the city. So that I'm saying that in order to illustrate that decision around Pinner was not made in isolation for the Metropolitan Police Service. So obviously we have regular oversight of the Metropolitan's operational policing, but this decision, partly taken in terms of resources as well as finances, is important to consider in those terms.
Yeah, but that consultation was flawed. I won't go into it in great depth, but I mean, in relation to my patch, Romford, there was no mention that we were guaranteed that was going to be 24/7. And then when the announcement was made, that was changed, but we had no opportunity to lobby on that. So, but even if there is a holistic approach that is taken, that doesn't mean to say that you can't, in your role as the Deputy Mayor, look at individual situations, especially when, as we've heard here, that there's no cost to that element. Anyway, I won't spend any more time on that. Thank you. I'm getting some looks from the chair, quite rightly, because we've only got you for a precious short time. So what I'd like to talk about, please, is alignment. The fact that MOPAC, and we've heard from the committee that they feel that MOPAC is too closely aligned personally with the Met, and does that not compromise your ability to have oversight on the Met? Because if you are, you can't be the gamekeeper and the poacher, really, and that seems to be the role that you are having to play at the moment. So I'm just wondering how you feel that affects your ability to have be independent and have a particularly robust approach on such things as discrimination and misconduct.
I'm not completely clear, Assembly Member Prince, about what you mean by alignment. I mean, I think we should all hold the values of more trust and confidence in the police being a positive thing, greater integrity within the police being a positive thing, greater crime stats being a positive thing, and the police being able to have the equipment and things that they need to enact those jobs, and that's our role in terms of making sure that the decisions that I take ensure that they have those enabling factors, but also the oversight we do, ensuring that there is a police force that is fit to serve London and is serving London in terms of ensuring that the crime outcomes are positive for Londoners.
I mean, no one would disagree with what you're saying, but the point there is that you have the role as the Deputy Mayor to lay down what your expectations of are the Met, but then does that not, because you're like giving the orders, does that not, so to speak, does that not therefore compromise your ability to then scrutinise? Really, you've got to scrutinise yourself and the Met, and it's very difficult to scrutinise oneself well. I obviously fail frequently. So there's this conflict where you can't be the judge and the jury, you can't be the poacher and the gamekeeper. And do you not, or is it simply that you do not see that? You cannot see what I'm saying.
Obviously the Mayor lays out his police and crime plan, and our role is to make sure that the delivery of the police and crime plan through the operational plan of New Met for London 2 now is being enacted, and that we're overseeing that and making sure that those commitments are being moved forward to. I would say that, we obviously have, as laid out previously, the way in which we do oversight, and that's one of the reasons I think that Baroness Casey recommended that we bring in the London Policing Board, so we have greater transparency on how we're overseeing the Metropolitan Police Service. But I would also say that obviously this Assembly has a great role in its oversight of the work that Mayor and MOPAC do through our monthly question and answer session, through thematics like today. So, I mean, I think that there is definitely a great.
Well, just 1 minute, Kenny. Yeah, I will bring you in. But I mean, I'm struggling to actually be convinced that you're understanding the point I'm trying to make. So I'll accept the blame for that. Maybe I haven't made it clear enough. But the thing here is that the waters have been even more muddied by the introduction of the board, by having a board of people that the mayor himself selects. I mean, that in itself is really not a good thing, that you have a board selected by the mayor to scrutinise the work of the mayor. It's like it'd be the same as if he was to select all the assembly members.
Member Prince, we are going into the London Policing Board later on in the question.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say any more on that. That's fine. I'm just making the point.
We are going to be behind.
All right. Well, I think maybe then I'll just say, Kenny, if you want to chip in, but I just don't think you're getting it.
So I take the point. Can we scrutinise ourselves and try and be self-critical, if you like? And I think there's two things I would say in that. One is that's why we do bring in external expertise, whether that's through the board or whether that's through external reference group or others, because you definitely can get into a stage, as any group can, about group thinks and things. So having external voices to come in and challenge our thought process and help us create that is something which I think is a positive. And that is something which has really changed, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years and has certainly helped me hone my thinking in a number of issues. The next point I would say is when we looked at the Fairfield review, we could have intentionally tried to keep that as narrow as possible in terms of how it looks at MOPAC, in terms of how it looks at our scrutiny. We haven't done that. The terms of reference have been left intentionally wide so that Dr Fairfield can look at us, can give us advice on how things can improve. So we're intentionally seeking out that improvement, seeking out not criticism or constructive criticism of what we can do to do better, because I think that's what Londoners would expect of us. They would expect that we are there to be their public voice, the mayor, deputy mayor, and that we put our best foot forward in that respect.
I will leave it there, Chair. I think it's just opened up a whole series of extra questions, which maybe some of my
and you're
colleagues
very
will pick up.
welcome to put those in writing, Assembly Member Prince. Thank you very much. Before we move on to the next questioner, could I say that we are running behind? We do need to, as my daughter's head of year says, get a wiggle on. Assembly members, please, robust and quick questioning, and panel members, please, robust and quick answering. Thank you. Assembly Member Hall.
I'm going to pass. The last answer was a complete word salad from the Deputy Mayor, so I'll leave it, Chair, and we can move on quickly.
Thank you. Assembly Member Garbutt.
Thank you. Baroness Casey had a view that the Met showed a tendency towards obfuscation and defensiveness. Do you consider these characteristics still to be accurate, and have you encountered institutional defensiveness by the Met?
I think that there is a tendency for the Metropolitan Police Service to be at points defensive. Through the work that we've been doing in our oversight role, I think it's improving, and I think there's clear illustrations of that. I think the work that we've been doing through the London Policing Board has led to greater openness to some of the challenge that we put to them, especially around areas that the board brings expertise on in terms of transformation and finance, and I think that has been taken on board and led to improvement. The work that we've done with them on the London Race Action Plan has also been a positive example of that, and the children's strategy. I'd also draw forward the work that we've done with them on Stop and Search, in that they have brought the Stop and Search Charter now twice to the London Policing Board, but also the work that we've been doing as MOPAC with them on data and oversight, especially on body-worn camera footage, has led to a new board that actively works across MOPAC and the Metropolitan Police Service. It's called the Holborn Group, but only because that's where the first meeting was, to actively kind of look at what we're seeing as MOPAC through our data and insight, and see how the Met can use that to improve their services. So I would say it is improving, but it's not without fault.
And do you think because we received some evidence from Dr. Shireen Daniels as part of this investigation, and she points to the fact that the Met Commissioner still hasn't met with her, like up until her sending that report at the beginning of February. And she's very clear that she's not taking this personally, but she is concerned about what it says in terms of the leadership, ownership of the issues within the 30 patterns of harm. So do you see that as a signal of him not showing that kind of leadership and perhaps that defensiveness?
I think the way in which Shireen was able to, while she was working with the Metropolitan Police, was embedded in the CDI unit. And I think there was opportunity, there should have been greater opportunity for her to meet across the leadership and the teams. I think that was a key reflection that we had in our conversations after her report came out. I know that I've definitely had meetings with her and the Deputy Commissioner, and I know that in the last LPB meeting we talked about how some of that work is being taken forward, but I think and questioned, what the leadership roles are in that. So I think it was a missed opportunity, but I hope in the work that they take forward on that there is greater understanding that it needs to be enacted as part of the positive culture that they're trying to drive through as a leadership team.
Yeah, because obviously the other part that Casey pointed out is that the Met doesn't easily accept criticism or own its failures, which I think is part of the response that we've seen to that report. But I know that we're short on time, so I'll do my other question.
I think can I just on that though? I think yes, and there has been cases, as last discussed in the last committee, around like Opjorica, where they have themselves spotted issues within their data, investigated it, and that's not to say that there hasn't been problems in the way the Daniels report was handled, but they are taking that forward now. I just think in the case for fairness that there are times we need to recognise when they have acted in a very proactive way. And actually, post Charing Cross, I noted that there was not the same defensiveness that we have seen previously from previous commissioners.
I mean, that's pretty extreme, though. They couldn't really ignore it. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the chair because I know that other Assembly members want to question before you head off.
Thank you, Assemblymember Garbett. So now looking at the areas of concern that have been identified by MOPAC, Assemblymember Best.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Deputy Mayor. Baroness Casey stated it's essential that the police are held properly accountable to the public for their actions, including organisational matters. Now, today we've covered the £253 million overspend for Command and Control and Connect. We've also covered the police station closures and the fact that, unlike in 2017, when MOPAC made sure there was a public engagement survey showing how police stations were used, you didn't do that. And again, we've heard how Pinner Police Station is closing. And when you were asked outright by an Assembly member if you would look into that, your outright answer was no. On the overspend in IT systems, you said, well, it's had a rough start, but it's fine. We haven't had the oversight on the police stations. What oversight are you making sure there is of the Met?
So, as previously stated, on Command and Control, there is regular meetings about how that is progressing, and I want to assure the committee in no uncertain terms am I clear that not only for operational reasons but for value for money that needs to be moved forward. We've also obviously worked with external audit to make sure that that is continued to be tracked. We take that very seriously. On Connect, my reflection, because of our ongoing oversight of it, is that we are conscious that it had teething problems, and that we've identified what those teething problems are with them, and that we've pressed them to move forward on them, and I believe they have. And on front counters, the 2017 consultation that you're referring to
engagement survey.
Sorry.
Engagement survey.
Okay, the engagement survey. My understanding of that, although I wasn't in office, was because that was directly related to disposals, and that's where our, as the owners of those buildings, that's why we did that with them. This is a different operational decision, as already previously stated in this meeting, because this is not about
No, you have to-
closures of
yes, but
buildings. This is
you
about
have oversight of the operational
decisions.
decisions.
Yes. And that's why we've had several meetings of this committee on it. That's why there were several meetings of it. That's why there was an initial proposal. That's why we pushed to have equality impact assessments done. That's why we also, and then there was a second proposal. But we can't, there has to be decisions made because there are budgets that need to be balanced.
So why did you say that you wouldn't look into Pinner Station today?
Because I think, partly because, as previously stated in this meeting, Chair, that is part of a suite of decisions. It's not a decision that the Metropolitan Police Service took alone, and because they're now moving into the implementation of those decisions.
You're the deputy
and
mayor,
this
and
is
you're
why
responsible for
previously,
oversight.
at the right stage, there was a push for greater engagement. There was, and those proposals changed on the back of those.
No, so Pinner Police Station
So
is being
it's
closed.
Assemblymember Best. I'm sorry. I think we have really looked into Pinner front counter here. Could you move on and ask the questions about oversight and culture, please?
I just want to establish
No,
that,
I know
Deputy
that,
Mayor.
Assemblymember Best, we are running out of
that-
time. If you keep doing this, it means that it's very unfair on your or the other members around this table, because it means they can't ask their questions. Could you move on, please?
Chair, with all due respect, it's always me. I've been speaking for 2 minutes. Assemblyman.
And I have, right from the start, when I intervened earlier, I said, could we hurry up, because we want to get these questions in. If you keep interrupting, not asking the questions, I will have to stop you, because I want to ensure that all members round this table get to ask the questions in the interests of fairness. Could you move on?
Chair, it's completely unfair. I'm literally not
Assemblymember
speaking any
Best,
longer than
could
anybody
you
else to
move
answer a
on,
question.
Please.
I've just been trying to
Assemblymember
ask one
Best,
question.
could you ask the
and you're
questions,
interrupting-
please?
But I would have asked it by now.
Assemblymember Best,
So
could
all
you
I want
ask?
to know
If you feel that you can't, we will send them as a written questions, and I'll move on.
I'm trying to just ask a question. I don't know what you want me to
Could you
not,
ask
don't
the
want me to ask
questions
and
that are
answer.
listed by oversight, please?
My question here is about operational matters and the oversight
Okay,
of the,
all right,
the
thank
of
you. I'm
MOPAC.
now
So just
going
trying
to move
ask-
on to the next assembly. We will put these questions to you, Deputy Mayor, in writing. Thank you.
Chair, this is actually
Assemblymember
I-
Small Edwards. Sorry,
This is
Deputy
actually
Mayor. I know
unreasonable.
that
I actually think that the committee should remove you as chair at this point, because you keep doing this to me every time. I'm trying to answer the questions that are on the
Deputy
paper.
Mayor,
Even your
Deputy
members know
Mayor,
this is out of order at this point.
Deputy
It's
Mayor,
every week.
I know
It's
that you have to
unacceptable.
leave. We have 2 more questions directly for you. Have you got time for just a few minutes? Thank you. Assemblymember Small Edwards.
Deputy Mayor, to what extent are the monthly meetings between the Mayor and the Commissioner used to oversee the progress of cultural change within the Met?
Are you referring to the bilateral meetings? Yeah. So the Mayor has regular bilateral meetings with the Commissioner. They are confidential meetings where the Mayor can talk to the Commissioner, perhaps obviously get operational updates, look at areas of wider strategic concern, or recognise positive growth in other areas, but they're the regular touch points to make sure that in his role he's enacting his responsibilities.
And the last published note of the Mayor's meetings with the Commissioner is from December 2024. Can you just confirm that those meetings are still occurring monthly?
Sorry? Again, he's got a technical point about the date, but I can confirm they are happening regularly.
Can you want to go?
Yeah, so we hadn't published them. I think you'll find now the last date is December 25, after we did a quick scrub yesterday. So apologies. And that is a failing of our behalf there.
Okay. And was that just because of how come, obviously timing is...
So we had just a process had fallen down internally. That's in my team. That's my responsibility. Nothing to do with the Deputy Mayor or anything. That's just an issue for me to look at and resolve.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, Kenny. And Deputy Mayor, can you just provide an example of how the bilateral meetings with the Commissioner do kind of provide challenging oversight of particularly the cultural change that's needed within the Met, which the Mayor has called for?
Yeah, so I would say that there's regular conversations about the work that the Commissioner is leading. For example, the work that the Mayor has invested in terms of the Leadership Centre training, making sure that the uplift, the investment he's made in neighbourhood teams are enacted, and obviously conversations post Charing Cross were to ensure that the high standards that the Mayor has in terms of culture is being driven forward and continually pushed for by the Mayor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to, excuse me, questions about the London Policing Board supporting MOPAC's oversight. Assembly Member Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. I do feel that I should put on record that I was completely supportive of Assembly Member Best's questioning.
Thank you very much, Assembly Member Roberts.
And she should have been able to put those points to the Deputy Mayor. It wouldn't have taken much time, but there we are. I wonder, to what extent has the London Policing Board established itself as a credible body?
So, my view is it has established itself as a credible body. I think when you look at the level of external expertise which is brought on board by it, which is expertise which at the price we pay we wouldn't be able to access from MOPAC. So I'll just take one sort of very, I don't mean this in a negative way about the gentleman, but a sort of boring technical one. If you look at Professor Sir John Aston, for example, who's been brought on board, who is Vice-Chancellor, Cambridge University, Chair of Royal Statistical Society, ex-Chief Scientific Advisor at the Home Office during COVID. I mean, somebody who is a world expert in their field with the best will in the world. You're not going to get people like that working day to day in MOPAC. So I think that those are exactly the kind of people, or Dr. Susan Lee, who you bring on. I do think they bring an immense amount of credibility with them in their ability to not just hold the Met to account when they are in the public meetings themselves, but in the sort of advice and counsel that they're able to give to the Deputy Mayor and the Mayor as well.
Do you think that the credibility of the London Policing Board is in any way devalued as a result of the fact that all of the people who sit on the London Policing Board are direct appointees of the Mayor of London with no oversight over their appointments, with no, well, there are qualifications, but some of them are simply there because they're political appointees?
So it's true that Kaya and Debbie are there because they're political appointees. That's right. There is an ex officio member in Councillor Butt because he is the crime lead for London councils.
And what expertise does Councillor Butt have other than being the appointee of London councils?
So I would suggest that his ability to be the voice of Londoners, councillors tend to have very good links into their communities. They tend to be able to understand what's happening. I imagine as an Assembly member you feel you're able to voice, if you were the chair of this, you'd be able to act as the voice of this. Councillor Butt acts in exactly the same way as Jazz Athwell did. It's not a party political issue that. If the chair of the London Council, if the crime lead happened to be from a different party, that's an ex officio post on the board and they would be the representative of the London councillors at that point.
Okay. I think it is a party political appointment. It's within the gift of the Labour group on London councils. But there we are. Also, we are also, I should stress, and we've made this point many, many times, and we probably make it at every meeting, we should have it as a standing item on the agenda, that we are the elected voice of London in this panel, and none of us has got a seat on that particular board.
And I think there's constitution, obviously your role, you say there's no oversight of the Mayor's appointment. I would argue this is the oversight of the Mayor's appointment in that way, because the role of the committee, at least part of it, is to oversee the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and the work of MOPAC. That includes the London Policing Board. It would be very strange, to the point that Assembly Member Prince was making before, for somebody to sit on a board as an advisor to the Mayor and then also to be sitting there to scrutinise them in that context.
Okay. Indeed. Well, quite. In what areas is the London Policing Board's influence over the Met's cultural reform at its weakest? And what steps are the London Policing Board putting in place to address that point?
So I think the key point that I noted before in response to Assembly Member Bailey was that where we want to see more improvement from the Metropolitan Police is around the positive cultural element. And
that's not the answer to the question, is it? That's what you'd like to see from the Metropolitan Police. I'm asking what's the weak points of the London Policing Board? Where are they failing? Where are they lacking?
So I wouldn't characterise it as that.
I would. that's why I framed the question like that.
And as I say, that's part of scrutiny and me being able to give an answer. And I think on that context, I would say, why would I pick that as an area where I say that is where the London Policing Board and where the Met needs to be moving further? Well, I would say that's because that is an area where we've been continually saying to the Met, well, we do want to see more impact. We want to see the metrics that you're using on the positive culture. We want to understand how you're going to move beyond just having then the metrics into the insights, the actions and the learning that you're going to take from that. And that is somewhere where at the moment we haven't seen as much movement as we like. So I'm not characterising that as being weaker or stronger in terms of oversight. I'm characterising that as an area where we would want to see more of the impact of that.
What powers of sanction does the London Policing Board have if the required improvements are not forthcoming?
It's the same. The London Policing Board itself has none. All of the sanctions, as they're there to advise the Mayor and others, flows from the mayoral authority.
Okay, thank you. And finally, where has the London Policing Board, if we can get a specific example, that would be lovely, where has the London Policing Board provided the most challenge on the Met's cultural reform, and how has MOPAC and the Met responded to this?
I would say it's provided most challenge probably on the London race action plan. I can send you a link to the committee where that was initially discussed, if you like. I think you'll see that was in civil service terms, a full and frank discussion about where the LPB thought things could be improved. They wrote to the Mayor with their views after that, as they should as advisors to him. There was then a discussion which took place after that. They were very, very clear on the need for there to be external expertise that was brought in, and they didn't feel fully that the Met were able to, that the plan was either sufficient in its current form or that the Met necessarily had the capabilities at that point to take it forward. The Met subsequently did bring in Shireen Daniels as a result of all of that, and work went forward. So that's a very concrete example. Sorry, I hope that does answer your question this time.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assembly Member Roberts. Assembly Member Garbett.
Thank you. I'd also like to just quickly state that I think that Assembly Member Best should have had a fair opportunity to ask questions like other Assembly members, and I know we'll, maybe
Thank you,
pick that
Assembly
up.
Member Garbett.
Just a quick question about, so at our last meeting, Diane Vincent from the Met Black Police Association said that some board members for the London Policing Board had resigned from the board, so this is a quote, resigned from the board because they basically were frustrated with what was going on and the lack of influence. So do you recognise those comments? Have you done anything to address the lack of influence that some board members have been, ex-board members have been feeling?
So one, the factual reason that the three, so there's been a number of board members who have left, but in particular the three members who have left who were recruited independently, if you like, rather than being ex officio, have all left for genuine personal reasons, which I will not go into further. Is there probably a feeling of frustration amongst members who've joined because they want to see further reform, especially cultural reform in the Met, and that people always want to see things go further and faster? Then yes, obviously I think everybody wants to see things go further and faster, including the Met themselves in that regard. So there probably is some degree of frustration. I'm not going to deny that, but that is not, and I can say that categorically, in terms of the reasons that we've been given, not the reasons that people have left.
That's interesting. I mean, I don't think Diane would have been making it up, so I don't know if that's it's just interesting that you've got kind of different perspectives on people's reasons for leaving. At the session that we had just before the Christmas break, where we were talking about to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor around the estate strategy, I raised whether there'd been any reflections around the TfL board and how that functions, how it works with politicians and elected members, and how it does its business, and how the London Policing Board could learn from that. I don't know if that's something that's been picked up.
So, yeah, I mean, there's always reflections come. I think the starting point from that is Baroness Casey's recommendation was that we set up an LPB modelled on the TfL board. Now, that only works to a certain degree. Why? Well, because the TfL board is actually an executive board in terms of the way it works. So it takes actual decisions. The LPB itself is set up to hold the Met to account and act largely with the people on there are there as advisors to the Mayor and how best that he holds the Met to account, and they do that through asking questions, advising the Mayor afterwards. But we have looked at how it operates, both in terms of its transparency, in terms of its secretarial functions. We use the same secretariat function as the TfL board does to try and ensure as much consistency between that and take the best learning and best practice from that. We have looked at how reports are done, how the presentations are given, but there is a fundamental difference in the way that the papers will be drafted and the way that the board will conduct itself because of the different powers that each board is invested with.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Assemblymember Desai.
Good morning. My question is to you, Caroline. How would you describe the relationship between the London Policing Board and the Met's senior leaders? And how has the Met's relationship with the Policing Board developed over the last 2 years?
Yeah, thank you. So since I've been in post, which was around October 24, that relationship has evolved quite a lot since that time. So one of the things that you'll note from the London Police Board is there's a lot more paperwork, information in the public domain around what the Met do on things like stop and search, things like London Race Action Plan, things that matter to Londoners. And one of the things that I've been doing is working with the Met and with members to make sure that those conversations get to the heart of what they're trying to kind of understand about that issue. So my assessment of the relationship between the board and members is that at times there's been frustrations, at times there's been asks for certain bits of information to be in the public domain, like Kenny was saying, pushing fast and further and faster for room reform. So some of that tension that you'd normally see in a scrutiny body does happen, but equally there's a growing understanding of the kind of constraints and the operational decisions that Met have to make to take forward pieces of work.
Just a sec, Chair, if I may. I mean, we were given the budget figures quite some time ago, but how much does it cost to run the board, staff costs, everything?
For the London
Policing Board,
yeah, the direct costs of the board are 411,000. So that includes things like member salaries. It also includes things like some of the events that they've run to get insight from the community. So there was an event run, a community event run in May last year to get some insight on stop and search before they then scrutinised the stop and search charter in the LPB that followed that. It covers things like training for the board. So they've had allyship training. So it's 411,000.
And the salary is presumably based on attendance?
No, so there is an expectation of between 15 and 20 working days, and the salary for members is 15,000.
Okay, Chair, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Best.
Thank you. I think there'll be a lot of Londoners thinking £1,000 a day sounds like a pretty good deal. So I wonder on that, is there anything that could be done to look at this again and look perhaps with Baroness Casey, is this how she envisioned this board? As I read the Casey review, I never believe this is what she envisioned. I think she just meant to make a more private meeting, more public when it came to oversight. It seems to have evolved into something different, and that salary, we obviously want to remunerate people for work they do, but £1,000 for a day's work sounds to have gone in the wrong direction.
I mean, it depends. If you look at government non-executive directors, that is roughly the going rate for people. And actually, and I know there's a great difference here, but these people, in terms of the private sector or what they would command there, the rate at a day rate would certainly be a lot higher in that sense. In terms of whether this is what Baroness Casey was envisaging or not, I think at the very first meeting of the London Policing Board, she came along and said that she was impressed with the calibre of people who had been recruited to that board. She looked forward to seeing its evolution. I know that part of Dr. Gillian Fairfield's review, she is going to be speaking to Dame Louise Casey about this, so we'll wait and see what comes out from that.
Okay, thank you. And Caroline, can I ask you, are you content with the way that the Met is responding to requests for information and recommendations by the London Policing Board? And did you want to give any examples of perhaps more positive things and more negative?
Yeah, so in the committees and the board meetings, there's usually identified actions for each of the agenda items, and those are followed up outside of the committee and then reported to the committee and the board. For the most part, I'd say most of those actions are completed relatively in a timely fashion. So that can be things like, I'm trying to think of a recent one, but information, more in-depth information on things like what have we had recently? Things like disproportionality and misconduct statistics on that they've updated on outside of that. So for the most part, those move forward relatively quickly. There are some more tricky ones that have stuck around for a long time. So things like metrics for what are the Met's plans for metrics around tracking cultural reform? How are they identifying and reporting consistently on those sorts of metrics? That's come up, I think, probably 2 or 3 times as an action, and we circle back to that intentionally in terms of the LPB work programme to track progress against cultural reform. So there are ones that get stuck and take a little while, and there are, I'd probably say about 70% of them usually are discharged within about 6 months of the board.
Thanks. And can I ask how many closed sessions of the London Police Board there's been since its creation?
I don't know since its creation. I looked at this last night. In the last financial year, there's been 5. So there's been 25 agenda items talked about across the meetings in financial year 24-25, 25-26 today, and 5 of those have been private sessions, and they've tended to be things where there's been commercial sensitivities, so things like transformation portfolio, where they're talking about benefits realisation. It's been things like the second part of the finance discussion at the November Performance Finance Delivery Committee, and that was because that was the point where the Met were talking about their budget submission and making their decisions around their budget before that being published. So it's been usually instances like that. The other example of a private session was June LPB last year, where we wanted the Met to talk to the board around their internal culture plan and their progress on that. And
Okay.
it was an internal plan for their staff.
Thanks. Could I just ask us, on that 20th of November session, that was obviously where there was the discussion around the scrapping of safer neighbourhood boards. Can I ask what Freedom of Information Act disclosure exemption was used?
For the boards?
For the 20th of November.
Yeah, I'd need to look at it. So when we have the private item, we usually consult with our information FOI lead internally. There's usually a record that, as Kenny said, we have GLA Secretariat support. So there's usually a record. I don't know the exact one.
Okay, because some of the options would be, obviously, it could be the personal information. I don't think that would apply. Trade secrets or commercial interests.
Sometimes
I think that would be.
I think.
So I think stakeholder engagement is the 20th of November item, which was done in private, I believe, isn't it? Which was actually about stakeholder engagement with other bodies, other public bodies like the IOPC, CPS and others.
So do you know which?
So I'd imagine it would be section 36C, which is prejudice to good conduct of public affairs, so that the Met can speak freely about the relationship with those other organisations and some of the struggles there in a way which would allow us not to, because otherwise the Met would maybe feel constrained about what they were saying in that space because it would possibly impact the relationship.
Okay, because there was some concern that obviously this is a really unpopular decision or contentious to say, and that was pushed behind closed doors. So I think addressing the reasons why that would happen is quite important to the public.
No, I agree, and I mean, I think it's less than, overall, I think it's something around, it's much lower than 20% of the things have been held in private, which when previously all of these discussions prior to the LPB would have been held in private, I think is a vast improvement in that regard. When it does happen, it's not something that we do lightly. I actually personally look at each of these decisions when it's going to be held in private and make sure they are satisfied with that. But just as with the TfL board, just as with any other board, there will be occasions when things do have to be held in camera for very good reasons.
Thanks. And Caroline, if I could finally ask you, what do you think is the difference between the London Policing Board and this committee?
For me, it's about the advice that those experts, external experts, provide to Kaya and to the Mayor. It's that advice, so listening to the conversation they've had, what are the most important things that they think need to change within the Met or need to change in our oversight to be able to affect that impact.
And so you don't think anyone on this committee is an expert?
Not at all, not at all.
If that's the main difference, then that's what.
I think
don't worry, we've got thick skin. You can say it if that's what it is. It's good to. But genuinely, the more we hear, the more I struggle to follow the thread of: is it advice? Is it scrutiny? What is the London Policing Board doing? And what's the difference between this committee? And so if the opinion is that they're experts, then that's fine. I'd like to know.
Some of the areas, so things like experts in kind of transformation, in cultural change, financial management, in anti-racism, all those sorts of areas is what we've tried to do in terms of identification of the right people, really, really great people who are able to kind of look at things from a different perspective to MOPAC officers.
Okay. So just to be clear, it's not about the people. It's about the constitutional role of each of them, and they are advisors to the Mayor on scrutiny. The role of the PCC constitutionally, whether you sometimes disagree with us or not, according to the legislation, is to hold the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and MOPAC to account.
Are they advisors first and foremost, or scrutineers first and foremost?
They're advisors to the Mayor first and foremost on scrutiny.
Chair, can I ask something very quickly?
Could we just finish
It's just asking, can we have a list of the people that are on the London board and next to it their actual expertise so that we can see exactly what they're an expert in? Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
No, that's thank you. If we could, thank you. Good intervention there, Assembly Member Hall. Thank you. Assembly Member Prince.
Thank you. And I would also like to put on on the record my concerns regarding Assembly Member Best not being able to speak.
Thank you, Assembly Member Prince.
Okay, so Kenny, it's been suggested to the committee that the London Policing Board could be an additional complexity and that it takes away from senior officers being able to undertake their roles effectively. What would your response to that be?
I mean, different people are going to have different views. My view would be that the London Policing Board is there to help the Mayor discharge his statutory functions in terms of holding the Met to account by supporting and challenging them as acting as a voice of Londoners, and actually that the board should be seen therefore as supporting the senior officers to help discharge their roles more effectively, either through challenge or through support.
Caroline, your thoughts on that one?
Sorry, can you remind me of the question, Assembly Member Prince?
Basically, the suggestion was that having the board gives additional complexity and that it's taken away from senior officers being able to undertake their role effectively.
Caroline, before you answer, could you pull the microphone a little bit closer to you, please? Thank you.
Is that better? Yeah. So I think it does create more work in terms of things like papers and attendance. However, it's not always the same people, it's different people across the organisation. But I've also heard from Met leaders that they found it helpful. So I've also heard from Met leaders that work on things like finance and transformation that they found the kind of challenge and advice helpful in their work. We heard from the Deputy Commissioner at the last January People and Culture Committee that he found the challenge around the cultural intensification work helpful it enabled him to have some reflections. Equally, I know that in the London Race Action Plan work, there was a series of workshops where members attended with the Met leads from the CDI Directorate, and they worked up things like definitions of anti-racism. What are the metrics that could indicate that things were changing culture in that? I know that that work has been found useful. So I'd say sometimes yes, other times really helpful.
Thank you. Very balanced answer. Caroline, could you tell me, when was the review of the London Policing Board completed, please?
So we received the review of the LPB effectiveness on the 30th of May, 2025.
Sorry, and could you tell me, who have the findings been shared with, and will it be published fully?
So the findings have been shared, obviously, with us, with MOPAC, with the Mayor, with LPB members, and discussed with them. It's been shared with the Met. And there's been a series of kind of work after receiving the report. Firstly, to kind of consider it, socialise it, think about the implications of that, and then secondly, to move into kind of a working mode and work up what next. What do the next steps look like? And that work is currently with the Mayor for review, and then we'll be implementing those next steps.
And will it be shared more widely?
My understanding is that we are going to publish a kind of summary, some of the key themes, key recommendations from that report, and then what the next steps are on the back of that, and that will be published.
And what specific findings from the review do you think MOPAC will use? It's probably better for you, Kenny, to answer this. Will MOPAC use to drive its own improvements, and how it oversees the Met's cultural reform? And again, how will we see these being put into practice?
So this actually goes, it was one of the learnings from the review, which I was talking about earlier. I can't remember in response to which Assembly member, about the reason that we have now appointed somebody at a slightly more senior level to take that sort of panoptic view and bring together the insights from across MOPAC, because I think what the review, one of the findings, if you like, was that you need to have strands which cut across various issues, which you then bring together and you keep coming back to in every area. So if you're talking, for example, to our violence against women and girls team in the Met, and they go in and speak to the Met, there's no point in us saying, well, they don't do culture, because they do culture in there. And actually we need that insight just as much as when we speak to the criminal justice team or we speak to the local neighbourhood teams. So that's one of the key things that you'll be taking from that, which we already have taken. We implemented that about 4 or 5 weeks ago, in terms of how we will oversee culture going forward.
So sorry, could you just elucidate a bit? I get you're saying that the VRU, for instance, should be dealing with. How do you bring that together? Do then the VRU bring up the issue about culture, or do you just say, do you just aggregate everything and then
Yeah, so it's more of an aggregation. What we probably haven't done well enough, or I haven't done well enough previously in the past, is create the structures for a specific discussion on positive culture. We have various meetings within MOPAC. So how our oversight works is that we have an oversight analysis meeting where every month the totality of our oversight goes into the oversight governance team. They try and bring that together with people from across MOPAC and think, what are we seeing this month? How does that compare to what we've seen last month, both in terms of crime, financial, culture, all of those kinds of data. That then goes up to a meeting chaired by me, which is about oversight coordination, about thinking, so what do we actually now do with this analysis? How do we drive that forward? How does that feed through? I think when we've done that, probably, if we're being self-critical, which I know you're not sure we can be, I would say we've probably not given, or I've not given enough focus on that to the cultural view. And what we've done, therefore, is it's not a sort of rival system, but we've got a sort of a slightly parallel system now which will operate, which is chaired by my deputy, and he'll then be in those meetings and able to bring much more of a considered view across, a holistic view right at the outset, rather than having to be formed through that meeting, so that we have a better understanding of that and are able to better escalate the issues as they come up.
Great. Okay. I'll leave it there, I think, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Best, I have taken note of the committee's feeling with regard to your asking your previous questions. I'm going to give you a few minutes, if you wish to take them, to ask the 4 scripted questions that assist scrutiny in this investigation. Would you like to do that?
Chair, I think the conversation has moved on from there. And
Would you like to ask questions? You've got 4 questions here. I'm giving you a few minutes. Would you like to ask them?
Sure, I'll go, but do you want to carry on? Because and I will come back to it in a minute because I wasn't aware you were going to do that.
Would you like to ask the 4 questions that are listed, Assemblymember Best?
Yes, sure.
Okay, please carry on.
But can I have a minute because I wasn't prepared for that? Maybe after the next question.
I was just about to go to a break, actually.
Okay,
If it helps, it's question 9.
After the break?
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, we will come back to that issue, and Assemblymember Best will ask her 4 questions after the break. Thank you very much. I'm going to take a 10-minute break now, so if everyone could be back here at 11:45. Thank you. Thank you. Coming back now to checking that we've got our panel back. Assembly Member Best.
Thank you. Just to recap, we were talking about operational issues and the oversight of MOPAC. And the Mayor had said, Deputy Mayor, sorry, had said that she was aware that at Pinner Place Station there was backfilling of officers on the volunteer counter. Could you pass that information to the committee?
We will provide whatever information we have about Pinner to you, yes.
Great, thank you. And onto the wider point around the oversight of the cultural reform, Caroline, would you like to identify where you think there's evidence that that's working well or evidence that it's not working well?
So in terms of MOPAC's work to oversee cultural reform and where things are working, so I think if I start with the LPB, because that is one of the biggest investments over the last couple of years. So Kenny talked about the impact in the London Race Action Plan area, but other examples of that are things like the children's strategy. So the committee has, the board, has come back to violence affecting children and young people. I think it was in the first December 23, then children's strategy in December 24, and then children's strategy again in December 25. And in coming back to those things repeatedly, they've been able to kind of centre the voice of children and young people in that. So one example is that ahead of the December LPB that just happened, some of the members met with some of the children and young people who'd been involved in helping the Met to come to their children's strategy, and they'd heard kind of what's happened 1 year on, from them, and then they were able to hear, the members were able to hear from those young people what they felt the Met was doing well, what they felt the Met was doing not fast enough, not well enough, and able to represent those views in that meeting. So that kind of centering the voice of children and young people. Also, the previous, the December 24 LPB, they were able to really push a child first stance. And that sounds like a bit of a buzzword, child first, but actually what it is an evidence base of what works for children when it comes to crime, whether that's victimisation or offending. And so what we were able to do is support the LPB members in an expert session. So we brought Professor Neil Hazel, who's a leading academic in Child First, to meet with the board to understand some of the principles. We'd also done that with the Met as well. We'd also got to Neil Hazel to do some work with the Met to try and influence that kind of policy position in that children's strategy to make sure that any of that work really does treat children as children. So that's another example. I'd say financial management in terms of the work that LPB has done to bring things like the flash
wider than the LPB? Sorry, we just did a long talk about the, and I know that's why we've kind of gone on, but this was more MOPAC more widely. Identifying concerns and providing that oversight. It might be that it is just through the LPB, but
no. No, I guess that's another example of how, so some of these issues are pushed through oversight in an LPB setting, but also in a MOPAC setting. So prior to the job that I do now in oversight governance, I headed up the Children and Young People's team. And in that, we regularly met with the officers that were working around policy on children, and we would be trying to put forward the views that we heard from local authority leads, the views that we heard from charities around what practice was working for children and what practice, in terms of policing practice, and what practice wasn't working and what we wanted to see in relation to that. So that's that kind of officer-to-officer level oversight that happens in MOPAC across all of the teams, whether that's children, young people, violence against women and girls, victims, criminal justice. And one of the things that I do now in the team, the oversight governance team, as Kenny was talking about earlier, is trying to bring the insight across the organisation together to theme it and prioritise it. So you might be in commissioning and hearing what does a charity think about Met practice in this area. You might also be in finance and be worried about the fact that Met haven't spent, all of the money they should have done on cultural reform, that they're seeing an underspend there. We try and bring those things together to identify what are the priority areas of oversight for the organisation. And then, as Kenny was saying, to put them to the right mechanism, whether that's LPB, whether that's a BiLAP between the Mayor and the Commissioner, whether that's a thematic oversight on things like public order or serious violence or high harm offenders. We try and make sure that goes to a different mechanism, some of those public, some of those private conversations to push those areas of oversight.
Thanks. And how would you categorise the Met's response to these cultural issues, especially when perhaps there is a concern that they're falling short, and not only their response in terms of the relationship, but also in transparency in what they share. Kenny or Caroline?
So, I mean, it's a topic by topic answer. I would say in general, it's vastly improved from where it was previously, building what the Deputy Mayor said earlier. They tend to, where you're able to bring real evidence to it, bring the kind of insights and say, look, here's where we're getting it, here's why we're saying this, and really evidence it, rather than it just being hearsay, if you like. And I think sometimes previously, like, you get, if you do just get a couple of things, a couple of comments from people, and you go to the Met with that, that's not constructive in the slightest, which is why we've tried to now bring that more holistic view to it. And I think when we do that, I would say 90%, 95% of the time, you tend to get a fairly positive approach. And I think that's because there is a much better willingness now to try and learn and to work with us and to understand where these concerns come from. I mean, a good example of that is we quite often pick up from, especially from local authorities, from councillors, from heads of community safety, from others. They come to us and say, look, we have some concerns about the way it's working in partnership with us, the way they're working, they're doing X, Y, or Z, or how we're offering them community space for them to work with, but they won't actually come and work with us and co-locate with us for bases to make sure they're closer to their communities or something like that. Now, previously, when we'd taken that to the Met, nothing had really happened. I think now, if you look at what happened with New Met for London 2, and the Deputy Commissioner in particular pushing, there is now a partnership chapter in that. They have reflected on whether the security standards they were wanting to apply for being co-located with local authorities and others was actually appropriate in that sort of space, and you are starting to see that kind of change and positive response to stuff being fed back into them.
If that was, so that's as an oversight body, how you're listened to and how you're feeling heard. On the other side, do you think there are areas where the Met would highlight that they think MOPAC is interfering too much or trying to be too involved with operational matters? Because that's a balance to strike, right?
So probably on the former, not necessarily on the latter, would be my take. I think there should always be a healthy tension between an oversight and an overseen body, shouldn't there be? If the overseen body thinks everything's absolutely fine, it probably means you're not doing your job as an oversight body in terms of holding them. It's just how you keep that tension healthy. I think it wouldn't be healthy if we strayed into the operational side of it and trying to take the decisions for them or insist on that side of it. I think that would be inappropriate. I don't think I've seen evidence of that happening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member Best. So I'm going to now move on to the oversight of cultural reform and the metrics and performance data. My question to both of you is the Met providing MOPAC and the London Policing Board with the data required for robust oversight of cultural reform within the organisation in a timely manner? And are there any gaps for additional information that would strengthen MOPAC's oversight of this?
So the Met doesn't currently have the metrics which has been with the LPB, and I think the Met itself wants to develop in that space. It's one of the things which I know the new DAC, Carl Galvin, who's taken over the CDI Directorate, is trying to look at. To be fair to the Met and any other organisation grappling with culture, it is not as straightforward as it is looking at crime outcomes or anything else. It is much more amorphous and much more, and there will be different areas in there. So there are things about what does your staff survey tell you, to Assemblymember Bailey's point earlier. There will be things about where are you seeing high levels of complaints, where are you seeing high levels of whistleblowing, equally where are you not seeing any whistleblowing, because sometimes actually if there's such a culture of fear, nothing will be being reported up. So I think there are KPIs and there are things here which can be developed. They have been working up a new tool. I think it was, I can't remember exactly what they called it, cultural
maturity?
No, there was a cultural maturity assessment, but then they've got some new ecosystem, which they've called it, where they're working to bring together all their data to help them look at all of this side of stuff. They have committed to providing public the results of their staff survey by the summer. So we are hoping that as they do that, they can develop, whether it is the outcomes or the outputs that they want to see from that. I think more important than actually having that data is really understanding what their logic ladder, theory of change, give it whatever academic title you sort of want, but it's understanding what's the evidence that the Met has about what's going on, what's the insight that they're actually taking from that, then what's the action they'll take and what's the learning, and then how does that sort of go on and rinse and repeat. And I think that alongside the data is actually one of the key things that we really want to see from the Metropolitan Police, because that would give us confidence that they had these systems in place to sort of continuously take what they're doing, learn from it and continue trying to improve. Whereas sometimes I think if you have just one or two output measures, that can be all you tend to focus on at that time.
Thank you. Assemblymember Hall.
Thank you. As you're still trying to work that up, I was going to be asking about the things that I thought were in place, but they weren't. But Baroness Casey noted that the Met's internal misconduct process took too long. Well, we all know that, any of us that work with officers. And it's particularly poor in cases of sexual misconduct. It fails to identify patterns of poor behaviour. It's more likely to dismiss allegations than act on them, and places a heavy burden on those raising concerns. So how are you actually working to reduce the time taken for misconduct cases and improve everybody's, I say experience, I'm using that word, but I mean, how are you speeding that up for everybody's sake?
Yeah, and so I think actually having in any form of system of justice, whether it's the complaints, misconduct, criminal justice, actually both for the alleged perpetrator and for the victim, it's much better if things can go quickly. Yeah. We do look frequently at the data around how many days it takes for these cases. We've also been pushing the Met not just to focus purely on the timeliness of the issue, because if you just want to get through something as quickly as possible, quite often quality suffers. So we've been saying, how do you make sure that you're keeping that timeliness, but also the quality, so that, again, for both the victims and the alleged perpetrators, there is fairness in that system. That's through dip sampling, making sure that happens. If you look at what Baroness Casey said about the sexual offenders and us not being able to patch stuff about, that also came up through what Eilish Angelini said more generally in her review of things. That is, and I'm afraid it's totally gone out of my mind exactly what the Met call it, but this is their new cultural ecosystem thingy, which I'll give you the proper title for afterwards, because that's not what it's called.
Not called a thingy, then? No.
It might
Fair
be, but
enough.
I don't think so. But I will write to the clerks with that afterwards, because, sorry, the name's gone out of my head. So that is an effort of them to sort of use technology to bring together all of these disparate bits of data and actually flag where there are issues around all of those things. That has been going on for about the last 3 or 4 months, and they're starting, they've said, to see some interesting outputs from that. They're due to come and brief us about it in the next few weeks to actually give us more detail on it, because it needs to run for a period of time given the data that's going there. And the other thing which I would highlight, which Baroness Casey said and which they have been trying to build on, is their domestic abuse and sexual offending team within the Met, which does look at some of the internal police perpetrated DA and other things like that, which was held up as a model of good practice and is something which they have been trying to build on as they go through all of this.
Well, that's good to hear, and I think it's something that we might be able to pick up on, because the amount of time it takes both the Met and as for the IOPC, don't start me on them, and it's just not fair to the police officers or any of the victims. I mean, how are you measuring police officer mistrust in the effectiveness of the misconduct system?
So that's something which will hopefully come out through the staff survey issue. It's also something where we speak to the staff support associations and we look at what we hear from them about that. We know that, for example, the Met BPA, the Muslim Police Officers Association, they certainly don't have a high degree of trust in that misconduct system. So we're looking at that, we listen to that, and then we try to feed back to the senior officers about what's going on.
Okay. I think, Chair, this would be a good thing for us to come back to if we're halfway through looking at matrices and how it's going to be measured. So I think it's best to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, and perhaps it's something we need to look at for a future work programme. Thank you, Assemblymember Hall. And I have to say, I do like the word thingy as a technical term. It covers a whole load of issues. Thank you. So moving on to MOPAC's engagement with stakeholders and Londoners to shape cultural reform within the Met. Assemblymember Lord Bailey.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Kenny on this. What are the key ways in which MOPAC works with stakeholders, community groups and Londoners to inform and strengthen its oversight of Met cultural reform? And can you provide examples of where this engagement has led to a positive change? I'm very interested in change because my charge against all of this stuff, a lot of what MOPAC does, there's a lot of word salads going on, there's lots of meetings going on and very little change going on. So I want to see what's practically changing on the ground.
So one of the great challenges earlier when we talked about oversight of the Met was the sheer size of the Met. Now, if you then think about engaging with the whole of London, that's a pretty big challenge as well, to be perfectly honest with you. That's why we do run the Public Attitudes Survey, which is our survey of Londoners, which is 19,200 Londoners a year. It is gold standard. It is better than the Crime Survey of England and Wales for giving us those kind of insights. Why do I talk about that, Lord Bailey? Because actually your internal culture quite often reflects your external culture in terms of what happens with issues. So if you can pick up areas where there are low degrees of confidence, low degrees of trust, we ask about where do we think is the Met reforming, and we can highlight the areas where we actually think that isn't happening as well. What's changed as a result of that? That is one of the areas where now, due to our improved relationship with the Met, we are doing joint work with them at those local levels, with those local officers that you talked about earlier, to try and make sure that the initiatives which are being taken at those local boroughs learn from both the best, and we focus on those where it's not perhaps performing quite so well. And we actually try and make sure that those things are evidence-based, that the culture, therefore, of the teams which is delivering that is positive, and that is then reflected in what is felt by the local communities.
But how are you externalising that? Because one of the criticisms is you know, the Met and MOPAC speak about these topics in very reassuring language, very generic language, always suggesting there's progress, but they've separated the organisational, the real power of the organisation, where the money's spent, who does what, who's in charge, from the idea of culture. Because you can get a lot of people around a table, they can have a meeting and feel they've done something great, but where is the lever? Have they identified the lever? And then have they pulled said lever? That's what I'm much more interested in. So how are you, making sure you're pulling correct levers, and then communicating to the public that that lever has been pulled, and the frontline officers as well?
So that's a totally fair question. That is part of... So one, how are we using our levers on that? That is one of the discussions which we have to have around, for example, you have the budget setting process. Where does the Mayor want to spend his money? What does he want to do? I think at the recent announcement last time, he talked about investing money into phone theft and phone robbery, which we know is a really important issue, does signal, to your point earlier, about the support for the frontline officers and all of the hard work that they're doing to make improvements in that regard. Equally, this is where I would go back to, I know this sounds, you're going to think this sounds a bit word salady, so I apologise in advance, but this is where we go back to the oversight analysis and oversight coordination meeting, and then being able to say to the Deputy Mayor, to the Mayor, as a result of what we have seen, here is what we think you should be doing. As a result, we have sort of, part of that discussion recently was on cultural reform, was directly around what is the budget that you are allocating for this, how is that going to work across there, what are the levers that are going to be able to be pulled for that. And when you talk about identifying what works and what doesn't, I'll not repeat my answer before, but that is exactly to the heart of what we're now trying to do with the Met, because we do have excellent evidence and insight team which is able to help the Met in that regard, and the Met have opened themselves up to that.
Okay, let me move on slightly, Kenny. In what ways is the Met and MOPAC working together to communicate the progress on cultural reform, cultural reforms, and rebuild London's confidence in the Met? Bearing in mind that haven't you just stopped funding Safer Neighbourhood Safer Neighbourhood boards?
No, we haven't.
What have you that you have stopped funding then, and you've asked the Met to fund? Or am I incorrect there?
Nothing.
So the neighbourhood boards that were running, that MOPAC were funding, you're still continuing to fund?
So no final decisions have been made on that yet. They'll be announced in the usual way. But I can confirm that we're not stopping the funding of Safer Neighbourhood.
Well, that does give you a leg to stand on, and you can point to some activity, which is a very good thing. But how are you going to support those boards? Because much of the conversation about those boards are some are good, some are bad.
No,
some boards will say they've heard and seen from you. Others will say they're weak because you don't support them. So where's the change?
So this is exactly the discussion I was having with Commander James Conway about a week ago, who is the new commander in charge of sort of police engagement and how all of this works at both at the local, borough, BCU, etc. level. Yeah. And I think what needs to happen is a proper review over the next however many months of what are the right structures, what is the Metropolitan Police doing, because actually ultimately what we want here is for the Met to be engaging with the communities, not for us to be going out and doing things in two separate ways, because that's not a fantastic use of sort of public money, if I'm honest with you. And then we want to work out how is that done. Do you still want your ward panels? How do you then build that up to in the most effective way possible to your sort of borough, your BCU level? And how do you make sure that what's coming out of that isn't just sort of whistling in the wind, but is actually something which can be aggregated up properly and then goes into something meaningful in the Met? And that's what I was speaking to James about, how we work jointly on that over the next wee while. And we were talking about getting SNB chairs and others into Scotland Yard for a proper conversation about that.
Can I make two suggestions? One is these boards need to be funded, and not just money-wise. Somebody needs to help them with their organisation and their professionalism. That would help their effectiveness. That will give you a greater payback than any straight-up money. And you need to provide in-reach to people who don't normally, because one of the problems with this, I've been a community worker for several decades, you end up talking to the usual suspects all of the time. One of my problems I have with, and when I say you, I mean MOPAC, not you as an individual, you constantly talk about disproportionality and overrepresentation, but you talk about it from one point of view, because as a black man, I'll tell you the disproportionality I'm most interested in is my propensity to be murdered. We are murdered the most. Right, but everybody keeps talking about stop and search and black men being stopped. That needs to be done, quite frankly. But when you're having a conversation, if you spoke to different groups of people, they'd be concentrating on what I'm concentrating on, the fact that we are disproportionately the victims of crime and also the perpetrators sometimes. So what's going to be done about getting other voices into this conversation?
So that's exactly the sort of stuff where I do think Assembly members, local councillors can help us, because you know your communities better than we do. You know your local patch better than we do. We're very happy to come and speak to any of you about where you think we should be doing that.
I volunteer my services. Chair, back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Assembly Member Lord Bailey. Assembly Member Garbutt.
Thank you. At our last meeting, Chief Constable Gavin Stevens said those who trust us the least should have the greatest opportunity to influence. So I'm interested to know if that's something that flows through with the work that you do with the Met, particularly around disabled Londoners who, in their response to the draft Police and Crime Plan, Inclusion London, were calling specifically for a disability action plan and criticised the Met for not having one. So I just wondered, if you could reflect on that comment around people who trust us the least having the great opportunity.
So I think that's absolutely right in terms of if you are looking to rebuild trust and confidence in the Met, you should start with where there is the biggest disparity there. That is at the moment LGBT plus Londoners, disabled Londoners. That hasn't historically been the case, but that is now the case, and especially across LGBT plus Londoners, you see that markedly. In terms of how that works internally, absolutely, Kaya is going to be, well, if she does, but she's got meetings coming up very soon with the Disabilities, is it called Disability Support Association, Disability Staff Association, and the LGBT plus one, to hear exactly from the Met Staff Associations in that regard, how they can help. We are currently thinking about what is the best way of engaging more generally with community representatives and groups from there. The GLA does quite a lot of good work already under Debbie Weeks-Bernard, engaging with deaf and disabled organisations, and I know that Kaya has been along to those meetings to hear directly from them about what they want to see from the Met. I've done that previously as well. it probably is something, self-critically, that we need to look at how we do better with LGBT plus Londoners and organisations in that space, because it's probably not been something we've historically focused on, but we probably, and the Deputy Mayor's very clear on this with us, that we do now need to focus on a bit more.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. But yeah, I think it's just specifically this ask coming from a deaf and disabled people's organisation for an action plan. And I know you've described that they're having lots of meetings. And I think this picks up on some of the things that Assembly Member Lord Bailey was saying, that it might be a nice chat. And, you know, probably isn't a nice chat because they're probably raising things that they're very concerned about. But like, we just need to see that delivered in, you know, a commitment. And I think an action plan would be that, like people saying, oh, we heard what you said and this is what we're doing about it, rather than it just being, some meetings.
And one of the things that we have, and this is where we use one of the mechanisms like the LPB. So one of the things we've got coming up in the May People and Culture Committee is a specific agenda item on trust and confidence of disabled Londoners and LGBTQI plus Londoners. And the idea will be for us going into that to try and equip committee members with the information around what's affecting trust and confidence to be able to elicit some of those actions out of the Met in that kind of setting. So there is a specific we want to have that conversation in public to be able to a way of transparently saying to the Met, what are you doing about this? How are you responding to this? And is that going far enough?
That's good to hear. And will that include organisations like Inclusion London and other like LGBTI plus groups that want to engage with that? Like, will they be invited to?
So we've done some work on the staff association views on that. So some LPB members have met with the Met staff associations in the middle of January, and I think those two organisations, there was a list of about 47 staff associations, and I think they were on the list, but we can check. But what we'll be doing is going to teams like the victims team, for example, at MOPAC. They run Victims' Voice forums. I don't know specifically what they've got in that area, but we were going to try and seek some of the insights so they can actually ground that oversight that happens in May in that experience. But again, if you've got suggestions of organisations we could reach out to on that, happy to receive them.
Okay, that sounds really good. And that meeting's in May, you said, on the culture?
Yep, I think it's middle of May, but I can confirm.
And just related to the community monitoring groups, which we heard from at the last meeting, one of the representatives said that there's an institutional defensiveness, which I know I brought up earlier, and what they found was that there's a refusal for the Met to engage with the group, and there's constant kind of pushback on their feedback, and they get the impression that the Met just kind of feel like they know best, was kind of the summary. Is that something you're hearing from community groups, and is there anything that you're doing to rectify that so people feel that their action...
Yes, I think that came up both from the Community Monitoring Group and the Safer Neighbourhood Board representatives, didn't it, in terms of their ability to... And that is something where probably the current structures don't always allow us to aggregate up those things, take the learnings from all of those different groups and take it into the Met. That is part of the programme which we're trying to take to fix that. There's stuff that we can do in the interim around making sure that we do have better relationships, that we're better able to sort of set the agendas and make sure that, not us, but that we're better able to, it slightly gets to Lord Bailey's point here actually, about provide the administration and the sort of the engine to make the car work better, which we probably do need to be doing. And we'll do that much better over the medium term once the Community Scrutiny Transformation Programme actually properly kicks in. But there is something for us to think about in terms of how we do that in that kind of intervening period to get as much bang for our buck as possible. Because to the point, again, about how do you make sure that communities feel the difference and see the difference? Well, one, it's by actually making sure that all the communities in that area are represented and can feel and see that they're represented. And then it's by making sure, again, I wouldn't say failing, what would I say? Another area of improvement for us potentially, about how those things are then communicated afterwards so that people not only know there's a group doing some of this work, but it's actually communicated back out to people afterwards about what has happened. And that probably hasn't worked quite as well.
And I think that's the point. You know, if we've got a lot of people giving up a lot of time, you know, to be part of these groups, and it's just them feeling like that contribution is really valuable. But I'm sure that will come out in some of our recommendations as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Roberts.
Apologies. There we go. Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask a quick question about this survey that we were hearing about? 19,200 people, 600 per borough. Is it the same questions which go to each borough irrespective, or are they tailored?
Yeah, it's the same questions which go. Some of them have been running since about 2007. Yeah. It needs to be the same questions so you're able to do inter-borough and inter-ward comparisons.
Yeah. And when's the next one going to be conducted?
It runs every day of the year.
Oh, okie dokie.
So we produce updates every 3 months on it. I'm very happy if you're interested to come and take you through it in more detail.
Yeah, that'd be. I mean, it's always useful.
If you're particularly interested in what happens for Richmond, we can automate and send you the reports for Richmond on a specific basis as well.
In a former life, I used to work in market research, so it's just the thing. In terms of individual boroughs, though, is it? I mean, what I would be interested to know is whether the ongoing questions can be tailored to add additional questions. I mean, particularly the 5 boroughs which are going to see their front counters closed. I think it would be useful to know what public opinion is of this, so that you get it direct from them rather than filtered through, party politicians, for example. Is that something which could be accommodated?
Not on a borough-by-borough basis,
no?
But we can. There's always an opportunity to add questions. The last opportunity, actually, for the coming quarters has just closed, but we can put that into the mix.
Excellent. Thank you. And Assemblymember Hall asked if we could get a breakdown of what each individual member of the London Policing Board, what their area of expertise is. The second angle of the London Policing Board's recruitment was to ensure that there is a diverse range of people with diverse lived experience. I've just been looking. We've got 3 professors, a companion of the Order of the Bath, a deputy lieutenant, 2 CBEs and 1 OBE represented on the panel. It would be useful to know where we're hitting our quotas on lived experience. Yeah. Yeah. So if we could find out about that as well.
Yeah, I would just point out that actually having an OB or a CB certainly should be no reflection of where you started or of your lived experience.
Absolutely not. But I dare say that most people on the London Policing Board haven't wondered whether they can afford a loaf of bread and a pint of milk over the last fortnight. Particularly not when they're getting £1,000 a day for the job. So that sort of thing will be useful. Thank you. Where are we? To what extent, now here we go, to what extent do Londoners understand the role of the London Policing Board in holding the Met to account for cultural reform? In fact, more to the point, do Londoners know that the damn thing even exists?
Oh, you could ask that about any institution, couldn't we? So we ask those questions. I think it's somewhere in the public attitude survey just hovers around between 15% and 20% if people have heard of the London Policing Board. I'm afraid we don't have comparable figures for other committees in this space, but that's, certainly not far off what. In fact, it's probably higher than I would expect, if I'm honest, for something like that. But I would strongly argue that most Londoners know that it is the mayor whose job to hold the Metropolitan Police to account, and one of the ways he chooses to discharge that following the recommendation from these cases to the London Policing Board. And I think given that is where the democratic sort of authority and his accountability comes from, I think that's the most important element for me of the Policing Board.
And just thinking about the role of the London Policing Board and the greater public's understanding of the role itself. I mean, just today we heard questions from Assembly members who, is it a scrutiny body? Is it an advisory body? What's the role of it? What steps is terrible grammar? What steps are being taken to ensure that greater awareness of the role of the London and how people might be able to, interact with such a body if they feel fit?
I'm sure today will be a positive start. I think, so in terms of that, many of our communications which come out from there talk about the London Policing Board as being at the apex of his scrutiny model. Don't know how many people engage with that. We quite often, we publicise when the meetings are coming up. They're all live streamed. We have the agendas and the papers are all published. We try to push this out through our networks when things are coming out, and we put out communications to try and drum up interest in it. I think there's always going to be, if I'm being entirely honest, a a slightly niche interest in something like that, just by the very nature of the body, but we are doing everything we can to make sure that people understand what this is. And we have been out to communities, we have worked with like for example, Safe Home Lewis, who helped set up those meetings and is very engaged in local communities with him to set up that sort of stop and search thing. We do use Andrew Simon to get into the VOG sector and other people like that. So we do our best. Could we improve? Could we always do better? I'm never going to say it's perfect.
No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. And yes, we like niche here, so that's fine. Question possibly for Caroline here. Is there a role for the London Policing Board in helping Londoners better understand the Met's cultural reform, particularly those communities most affected by the issues identified?
Yeah, I think there is, and I think the biggest step forward from my perspective on the LPB is that transparency, is that there are information out there about the Met's approach to key things that matter to Londoners, like Stop and Search, like the London Race Action Plan, that they're there and available and people can access them. Some of the members that have more networks than others in terms of social media I'm talking about, and networks, so sometimes when they clip or share questions and answers from the Met, from particular committees and LPBs, there's some of them who've got an awful lot of members, and I've seen comments on them, others don't. So I do think there is a role, yes. Like Kenny said, I know that Kaya often puts things out on LinkedIn, and her team put things out around the boards and the committees, but some members do and use social media in that way, others don't.
Fair enough. And just to one final thing on this business about going into closed session. Again, it's not something that I'm familiar with as how the London Policing Board works, but I'm familiar with how councils work, for example. So if you're in a closed session, is that for the entirety of the meeting, or is it just the individual agenda item?
It can even be sub-parts of an agenda item.
That's very useful. Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Question for Kenny. Kenny, we keep hearing about the safer neighbourhood boards, and we have done, consistently since I've been on this committee, and you've mentioned it today. I wonder, could you tell us, and there is a real confusion out there about what is the future of the safer neighbourhood boards? What is the future, therefore, then, of community scrutiny and oversight? And I also ask this with the background of knowing that in my own constituency in Southwark, we now have, and I'm sure you're aware, the Policing Oversight Board. So could you just unpick that for us, please?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say, and again, I did this earlier, of putting stuff into an indirect and a direct box when it was quite loose, but I'll put stuff into an engagement, a public engagement for the police, and a community scrutiny box for the police. And there's two slightly different things, because one is how do the police hear from the public about what matters to them and then act on that, and how do the police engage on various issues. And the second one is then how does the actual public hold the police to account for things that have happened or things that the police are doing. Now, I talked earlier about the engagement, where I spoke to James Conway, and that is something where there's going to be a review. As I said, funding decisions will be confirmed in the normal way, but we will be funding to some extent safer neighbourhood boards for this coming year whilst we do a proper review, and that will need to take the next year, because I suspect come May, things will change a little bit, and we will want to engage with local authorities over all of that sort of stuff. So that's a conscious decision in that space. On community scrutiny, this is something which was a Mayor Manifesto commitment, and where he said, and I think I would argue that recent events like Charing Cross and elsewhere reinforce this. Actually, it's really important that there is effective community scrutiny, and not just in custody, not just at stop and search, but if you look about some of the important new powers which the Met's using very effectively, about live facial recognition, or you look at how they use, more thorough intimate part searches, all of these issues. I think public confidence could potentially be boosted if there was proper community oversight of these things. So this is part of our programme to, one, expand the oversight available, to Lord Bailey, Assembly Member Lord Bailey's point about how do we get that wider reach in the community so that more people are properly represented on those groups. And we're hoping in the next financial year to start rolling out this to, I don't know, a number of boroughs so that we can sort of do that. That will be sort of evolution rather than revolution of the current groups there. But we tried a pilot in Hackney, which we'll be taking the learning from. And again, that's Commander Conway within the Met that we're working on in that. We should be in a position to say more to the groups impacted and who are working in this space, I would say, within the next sort of 4 weeks or so. We're hoping it would happen a bit sooner, but there's been a few budget discussions which have just been rumbling on.
Thank you. And obviously, you've said that there is now going to be a review. How can you see that any, if you finally decide that the Safer Neighbourhood Boards might be replaced with something else, how will those proposals affect MOPAC's oversight of cultural reform in the Met?
So, just to be clear, I mean, the Safer Neighbourhood Boards, they're not really oversight. They're more for the police to engage with. And so that we speak to them and whatever would... I mean, I think there will still need to be some sort of mechanism at a local level, at borough level, for bringing together ward panels, etc. So exactly what form it takes, exactly how it works, and it's more a question for the Metropolitan Police in that space. We will still engage with the people. I don't think that will have a direct impact on our cultural oversight. I think the community scrutiny model, where this is about putting more of an engine to the car, if you like, to use my earlier analogy, and being able to aggregate stuff at a top level. And that should be beneficial both for the Met, because they'll get better quality, better aggregated feedback. Which isn't to say they don't get good feedback at the moment, but it will just be more holistic, where you'll be able to pick out those themes. And we'll be able to see what are the themes a bit better, hopefully being brought out on a pan-London level. And that should help us identify if there are cultural issues or if there are wider issues which we need to pick up in that space.
Thank you, Kenny. We're now at the end. Sorry, Assembly Member Roberts, I didn't see you, sorry.
It's just a very quick one. At the moment, Safer Neighbourhoods sit outside of the Metropolitan Police, they're directly under MOPAC, but the proposals are that the new system will be that they are as part of the police, which obviously raises question, who shall guard the guards is the...
So they don't do oversight per se?
No, but they do sit outside of direct police control, don't they? They sit.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say... There's an interesting philosophical question here about what constitutes control and whether ward panels are controlled by the Met or whether it's the ward panel chair.
Irrespective of control, they sit outside of.
Yeah, so we fund their administration and we fund some of the grant scheme stuff at the moment. I wouldn't say we necessarily control the SNBs to any great shakes, if I'm honest with you. They are a tool which operates independently of us, in which we have hitherto seen the benefit of them operating as an engagement tool for the Metropolitan Police and have funded that consequently. I think the key thing about whatever we set up in either space is that either scrutiny or engagement is it has to really be seen as being independent of us and of the Met, and it has to genuinely be seen as representative of those communities. If it's seen as being under the control of us or under the control of the Met, I don't think you will get the people, some of the people that you really want to be on those groups, and I don't think it will command as much trust otherwise.
The concern at the moment that I have is that at the moment they sit outside of the Met. They sit under MOPAC. Whether it's controlled or not, I don't mind, but they sit outside. And what we've been finding time and time again is that in the regime of tough choices, we find that the Parks Police go, that front counters go, that safe travel teams go, that mounted divisions go, that dogs units go. And each time we're told this is an operational decision for the Metropolitan Police and we have no control over it. So if we place another thing within the remit of the Metropolitan Police, at a time there may come a further cut, which means that they say, actually, we can't support this, and we will have lost any chance to challenge that cut.
And I think this comes from, I can't remember which Assembly member asked earlier, about the levers that you have on certain things, because regardless, because my view would be that the SNBs don't really come under MOPAC, other than the fact that we provide some of the money for them, which I know then you'll say, well, it definitely does. But in the same way that the central government or whatever provides some money for policing. Nobody would say that the policing wasn't independent. So I think there are still levers there to ensure that, even if the reason for the engagement is for the police to hear from the communities in that way.
No, you have a trusting faith, Kenny.
So I thought you said he had a trusting face for a moment there. Right, let's not go there. Assembly Member Lord Bailey, one last quick question, please.
One quick, just to pick up on Assembly Member Garrett there. I want to read something to you for you to understand the strength of feeling of the idea that the Safer Neighbourhood Boards should be elsewhere other than MOPAC. Natty Stewart, the chair of the Pan-London Community Monitoring Group, stated, when asked were there any good examples of engagement of stakeholders, she said there are no good examples. MOPAC has shown nothing positive that would allow stakeholders or partners to show they trusted the policing or not. And that's really important, because a sceptic would say MOPAC's tactic here would be to say this is a policing issue, so we give it to the police, and it's inevitable that the police will close it down because they're having to deal with cuts that they're getting from the government. And if you run the police, you've got a Safer Neighbourhood Board who may be a little bit troublesome, who may point out some of your weaknesses, or you can get an extra Bobby on the beat. You know which one the police would pick. And so
just to say, Natalie runs the Community Monitoring Group network. That is something which we will continue as part of the community scrutiny transformation. So they do the scrutiny element that Natalie works at the moment. The Safer Neighbourhood Boards are separate.
Again, I understand that, but she was talking about Safer Neighbourhood Boards.
She was talking about Safer Neighbourhood Boards.
I said she runs the Pan-London Community Monitoring Group. She said that MOPAC have done nothing positive around Safer Neighbourhood Boards. That was her general gist. And I want to be very clear that they are an opportunity for you to help yourselves and the police. But don't think you can get away with just handing it over to the police. We are watching. We are watching. Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to come back on that, Kenny?
I'm not sure there was a question. That's fine.
No, there wasn't, but thank you.
Well observed.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to thank our guests for attending this morning and for the answers to the questions. Can I ask the committee to note the report and the discussion? Can we also delegate authority to me as chair in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output arising from the meeting?
Agreed.
Can I ask the committee to note its work programme?
Noted.
The next meeting of the committee is scheduled to take place on Wednesday, the 25th of February 2026 at 10 a.m. in this chamber at City Hall. I have no urgent business, so that concludes today's meeting. Thank you very much, everyone.
Broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority.